Greetings and welcome back to Full Time. I am Tamerra Griffin, and friends, we are in the thick of it. Your girl is capital T tired. I'm not even gonna front because we have been busy out here and we've only reached the quarterfinal. Well, I guess we're on the cusp now between quarterfinal and semifinal stage, but it has been a busy time. 4 games packed the punch almost of like an entire NWSL weekend. I don't know about you, but it's been a lot. And it's award season. This episode is going to be Meg and I breaking down all of the awards, the nominees, who we think should win, who we think got snubbed, what we need to be considering with awards. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know I love me a good Meg Linehan philosophical MVP debate. And on that note, I'm going to welcome my co-host Meg Linehan. Meg, how are you doing? And how is your post-quarterfinals recovery going? Because I'm feeling a little dehydrated.
You said capital T tired and just like add an infant onto NWSL Playoffs. And I mean, I'm standing. I'm not currently standing, but like I'm awake, right? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that counts.
You get a gold star for being awake for sure.
You know, this has been also like Salem was sleeping on me through most of these games. And so like I couldn't physically react to things. And I was just like, okay. I mean, like I enjoy it. It's very cute when he sleeps on me, but I was just like, I'm a very physical watcher. I like a stand in front of the TV moment, and I was not able to do that this weekend.
If you need to. Yeah. My question is, where was he when Marta'd?
He was on me, and I was losing my mind.
Oh my gosh. I feel
like very silently.
Someone needs to study the like spiritual, emotional kind of like exchange that might happen when a baby is making skin contact during a big sports moment, because it's
just the aura that is happening, right? Exactly. And then I will say, like, I mean, I posted about this on Blue Sky, but I actually went out. The NWSL shop does have baby onesies. And I went out and got a Marta onesie for him. And the next day I was like, he's going in the Marta onesie. The aura must continue.
It's only right. That Orlando Pride Seattle game. I honestly, speaking of which, Domino's, full respect, because I did not know your game was like that. Just to call back to last week's episode when we had to relate playoff games to takeout orders, full respect to Domino's. I mean, that game ended up ending with a bang, and I love that for us. But were there any other playoff games that stood out for you, Meg, that we haven't?
I mean, I do think like 3 out of the 4 were really bangers, right? Like Portland, San Diego is kind of like the rough one of the bunch, and to be fair, it picked up fortunately after the first game, the KC Gotham game. Like, and so you're coming off KC Gotham, which has this massive, you know, like the upset to end all upsets. And then you have to go back to Portland, San Diego, and it's like, I'm like not rooting against this game, but I'm at an 11, and this game is at like a 6.
Right, and the 6 probably felt like a 4 because that KC Gotham game, which I was at and am personally still recovering from in a lot of ways, was crazy. Yeah. Honestly, and like it was the upset, it was the last minute nature of those last 2 goals that were scored. It was Casey losing at home again and the heartbreak of that. It was Gotham popping off. I mean, that was my dumpling game. Didn't know what we were going to get.
Yeah.
But do we need to talk about the absence of some of the more notable stars from this playoffs? Because yes, I was fully entertained, though in very different ways across the 4 quarterfinals. But Carrie Bradshaw couldn't help but wonder what each of those games would have been like had Barbara Banda been there, had USWNT been there, had even, I mean, this is going way further back in a different kind of what if, but if Sophia Wilson had been there, you know, with the Thorns. Do you think we've lost anything necessarily by not having them there? Or what do you sort of see as like the plus minus?
Yeah, I do think there's obviously a big loss on the marketing side, but I also I think this was going on in our little full-time WhatsApp group, right? Like, I'm pretty sure it was Theo being like, I cannot believe the last image we're going to get of USWNT this season is her looking sad in the player's box in her little, it was a very smart outfit with the jacket and the beanie, but just like, that's not the final image that we should have of USWNT from this season. Like, that is absurd. And so, like, yes, upset. I mean, but Michelle Cooper as well, right? Like, this was a team that was missing a couple of big players. And I know Vlatko didn't want to use it as an excuse. We can set aside the whole conversation of whether Bia should have even been playing or not. But I think there is this sense of you want the biggest stars in these biggest moments, because not only do you want it from making everybody watch this and having that reason to watch it, but it's going to just make the games more entertaining. Though I will say full credit to Trinity Rodman, who went through every single emotion known to mankind while sitting on that bench. Just everything.
It reminds me of those magnets where it's like, how are you feeling today? You can make one probably with her. I missed some of that game because I was on my way to KC, but I've seen the memes. And yeah, Trinity was going through it. Full support to her for like embodying as much as she could of the game without stepping onto the pitch. But these are always interesting sort of debates, I imagine, from a coaching side. I mean, Esther did not play a single minute with Gotham.
And Esther, I think, also provided plenty of... Every time they cut to her on the bench and she was just actually a human blanket and not a person, it was, But I do think, like, it is really frustrating. And, like, I do hope that we get to see players like Esther and Trinity Rodman, right? Like, get their moment, especially knowing that both teams are moving on. Trinity Rodman was technically available. Like, I think there was some caginess, right, from coaches. And in a good way, right? Because I think there's going to be a long-standing debate over whether Bia should have been playing on a sprained MCL, 100 minutes of playing time, right? And, like, how much do you want to risk players? And that decision was made the right way for Tamerra and Meg, because that is a generational talent. You want to protect her. Trinity Rodman, same thing, right? Like, these coaches have seen what happens when these players are missing. Yeah. But to have it happen now, like, I mean, you can't really control it, but it is deeply unfortunate for the NWSL, the viewers, the players themselves.
Yeah, and there's that tension between knowing what Bia's injury was and seeing still what she was able to do in spite of it, that brings in a really important ethical sort of layer to the sporting experience. What does it mean when an athlete still impresses, working through that kind of pain? Vlatko talked about that too. So lots to consider, lots to discuss, even if we were only talking about the players on the pitch. But because so many notable names were either injured and playing at half capacity or completely absent, we would be remiss not to acknowledge them too. But moving into awards, which these two things are kind of related to me, because I know, Meg, you always love to talk about MVP, for example, in terms of what happens when this player is not on the field. And I just wrote a piece for The Athletic about Kansas City and Tamerra and what happens when she's not on the field and how that team looks and how it's sort of like a positive, negative thing. Negative, of course, because they're out of the playoffs, but positive for Tamerra fans because that just adds more fuel to her MVP fire. But we are going to be discussing the MVP candidates, Goalkeeper of the Year, Midfielder of the Year, Defender of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year. Lots of good names, I would say. Lots to discuss for sure. But before we get into that, make sure that you're following us on our socials because things are heating up, guys, and the content is going to be contenting, trying to keep up with it. Not only the things that we discuss on this show, but extra content that you can see on Instagram and TikTok at TA Fulltime. Make sure that you send us emails, pouring one out for you Kansas City fans, pouring one out for San Diego. Racing Louisville almost did the thing.
They almost
so
did the
close.
Thing. Yep.
And Seattle Reign as well. I'm sure they are real happy to be back in their beds after spending so much time in Orlando between Decision Day and the quarterfinals. But if you're supporting a winning team too, tell us how you're feeling. I love the stat that the 4 final teams are all the last 4 NWSL champions.
It's
like
so good.
Script writers.
Yeah, it's so good.
So good. So let us know your thoughts. Reminder, too, that we're always posting episodes of this full-time show on YouTube. If you prefer to watch your podcasts, you can find us there. All right, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to dig into these awards. All right, Meg, it's time. Awards season. And just as a note to the listeners, on Monday, the NWSL announced the players who've been shortlisted for this award. But we will be adding our own write-in answers as we see fit because we have a lot of thoughts. And we also have very recently seen the list ourselves. So we're going to be reacting to this in real time with you. we're going to be doing this together. All right, Meg, let's start with the MVP shortlist. I'll read the names, and then we can have a discussion about how we think this should go. Delphine Cascarino from the San Diego Wave, Tamerra Shawinga, Kansas City Current, Esther Gonzalez, Gotham FC, Manaka Matsukubo, North Carolina Courage. And I didn't say we weren't going to be biased. This is the whole point, right? And Via Zenerato from the Kansas City Current. Now, I know I gave the Manaka look. If you've been listening, you know how I feel about this player. But this one, at the end of the day, is not much of a debate, is it?
No. And I want to bring back what we were talking about at the start of the show, right? That you just brought up in terms of the playoffs now putting some of these players into starker relief. And I almost want to take a step back first, and we'll set aside my usual MVP conversation because I think it's kind of now implied. But what I find really interesting too is in my brain, the NWSL awards are regular season awards, right? And that is because that is how they started. And as someone who's been voting on them in some form or another since year one, in my brain, there is like a hard cutoff of, okay, this is a regular season award. Should I or should I not be including the quarterfinals? In my brain, it's like, no, I shouldn't be. But that's never explicitly stated by the NWSL. And so now I think because the second round, and so you and I vote, right, in that first preliminary round to get these shortlists. And that happens before the quarterfinals.
Yes.
So all of these names are coming together before the playoffs actually happen. Again, kind of implying that these are regular season awards.
Yeah.
But now we have that first round of games, and you can kind of, do you turn that part of your brain off saying like, okay, I've watched these 4 quarterfinals and that impacts how I think about the regular season, especially when it comes to Kansas City, I think. Or do you set that aside and be like, no, I want to judge it from the standpoint of these regular season games? And so, Tamerra, first I want to open that up. Like, are you allowing the quarterfinals to influence you a little bit here?
Honestly, no. I feel pretty confident in who made an impression on me during the regular season. And to me, and maybe this is partly because of this quarterfinal, nobody getting a bye week playoff structure, that it feels like there's more of a definitive separation, not like temporally, because we definitely went from one to the other.
Yes.
My body can confirm. But it feels still that there's more of a separation between regular season and postseason for me to be able to mentally make that sort of distinction. And to your point, because you and I and other members of the media were able to look at that shortlist at the end of the regular season, for me in my brain, that's sort of where the timeline of this journey begins. Now, when it comes to everyone else who was not involved in the shortlist voting, maybe not so much. And I think the fact that this list came out on Monday, not even 24 hours after the last quarterfinal game, it's hard to not have some of that like emotional leftover emotions that are going to influence you. So I guess it's interesting to wonder whether this is what the league wants, because they could have timed it however they wanted, and there must be a reason they did it like this.
There was more of a distinction from the NWSL, and part of that is A, the season was shorter, B, the timing of international breaks, I think generally did actually create this separation between the regular season and the postseason, and now that international break has kind of shifted as the season has gotten longer. And so I think even though it wasn't ever explicitly said, it was like very clearly implied of this is a regular season award, and also they're getting presented ahead of the championship, which was honestly like a pretty recent-ish development for the NWSL. Like that really didn't start happening until I want to say 2018. Like Lindsey Horan was the first MVP to actually get an MVP award handed to her. So the awards,
was it just like acknowledgement before?
It would be like a post after, and they would get something shipped to them. So it was not necessarily like, and now this is also, we should say, the first year that we're ever going to get like a true award show happening for the NWSL. So now there is like, I think a lot more pomp and circumstance around this. All of this being said, the answer still to me is Tamerra Shawinga. Like it's not even a debate, I think, this year. I think there are absolutely really good candidates here, but Tamerra Shawinga has just been a force since coming to this league, and I don't I don't know how you look at this year, even with the injury, even with what happened at the tail end of the season, and not say Tamerra Schwenga.
100%. And I think when I look at these 5 names, Delphine, Esther, Manaka, and Bia, one thing that I think goes in favor of Tamerra is the consistency, because I think in the beginning of the season, the San Diego Wave were outperforming expectations given how much turnover they had, brand new coach, pretty new GM, new ownership. The list goes on, a lot of departures of big names. And Delphine really sort of rose to the top as a force. Her dribbling capabilities, her goal contribution, she, I believe, is still leading the league in assists with 6. And it's her first season in the league, coming over from France. And I think that things like that definitely add to the argument. But the San Diego Wave faltered. And we're talking about value. I think a true MVP winner is a player who is able to make contributions no matter how the team is doing, is able to make an impact no matter how much they're playing, whether they're even fully fit or not, which is a little bit like stickier and debatable. But I feel similarly about Manaka. North Carolina had a really tricky season. And I do think that even when North Carolina was struggling, Manaka was still impressive on an individual level. But I do think in the first half of North Carolina's season, I wasn't seeing as much of Manaka's play sort of elevating the collective. And I think that's another factor that you have to consider for MVP.
Yeah, Tamerra, I feel like you have adopted my emphasis on value. So I'm so glad, like, I'm slowly but surely converting everyone to like hammering value in terms of valuable player. It's going to be interesting too. So, I mean, for full disclosure, at the time of this recording, I have not actually done my final vote yet. So I want to say, like, I am a movable object. The other part of this that's really fun too is when we vote, we are actually ranking from 1 to 5, right? And so like those points might matter in the long run. So for me, Manaka might be my second choice. But I do think there's such a, much like the KC on the NWSL standings, there's a big gap between that 1 and 2 on this category for me.
Yeah, especially considering that Manaka is on the only team in this MVP shortlist that didn't even make it to the playoffs. And I know we're not considering actual playoff performance, but in terms of impact and, overall team success, that says a lot about her individual game. But yes, it's Tamerra again. And we may have to have an emergency pod if things don't go that way. It's hard to even imagine that.
It's just going to be us
screaming into voice.
Someone's iPhone in front of us being like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And that will say everything that needs to be said about that. But she's singular still. And the award should reflect that. Simple as that. Okay, let's do Goalkeeper of the Year, Meg. And Katrin Berger of Gotham FC, Claudia Dickey of Seattle Reign, and Lorena of the Kansas City Current.
For me, I'm leaning Claudia Dickey right at the moment, just because I feel like, again, taking that sort of value approach. She kept Seattle in so many games that they didn't really have business being kept in.
Yeah.
And so this for me, like, yes, I think the stats are important. Lorena, I think, has a real shout. AKB for me, I don't think is the pick this year, right? And maybe that is, again, that moment in the quarterfinal, providing some recency bias. But right at the moment, I am leaning Dickey just because I think she was so important to that Seattle Reign team, making the playoffs, finishing where they finished too. And yeah, she had a very solid season.
That's real. It's interesting because with goalkeepers, I find myself veering more toward comparing each of these candidates' individual performances. And I guess I'm also allowing the overall team's sort of success to weigh into this, because for me, it was easily Lorena. She had the number of shutouts that she achieved this season was phenomenal. Yes, she had, in my opinion, one of the best back lines in the league in front of her.
Arguably the best.
Arguably the
easily.
best. Right. Maybe now I'm having recency bias because I was at that KC game. Yeah. But point stands. Agreed. But I think that her presence in Kansas City has been so consistent. I think her leadership, a different kind of leadership, almost like Alyssa Nair-esque when you watch her. She's not going to be shouting all of the time, but you can tell that she's leading that back line. And I think that on an individual level, her MVP candidacy is a little bit quieter in that you don't find yourself worrying that much, knowing that she's in the that she's back there. So she gets the vote for me. And I will say, as a quick note on AKB, because she was Goalkeeper of the Year last season, right?
Sure. The fact that I remember anything about last season at this point is a miracle.
I'm nearly positive. Well, fact check that. This is where we're at, guys. We don't remember what happened last season, but in my mind, she was the Goalkeeper of the Year last season. Theo will tell us. But I bring that up to say that when there's a player... She was. Okay, great. We're here. It's similar to a Temwa debate, but sort of on the other end of the spectrum, in that I think when a player gets nominated 2 years in a row, you have to both look at what they've accomplished in the context of the season, and in my opinion...
But you get that comparison to last year. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that's why, for me, I'm feeling more that AKB is going to be ranking third here, because I don't think that her performance this year was as strong as last year.
And part of that, too, is up to Gotham as well, right? The fact that Gotham was sort of all over the place this year. But, yeah, I mean, it is... I think my Claudia Dickey pick, I always think about the year that Alyssa Nair won Goalkeeper of the Year with the Boston Breakers, and they were, I believe, the worst team in the league, and she was like the only bright, and like had made so many saves, right? And games would have been like 10-1 instead of 3-1, and Nair still won. And so I think there is still a little part of my brain that goes, okay, how much damage did you stop in terms of, keeping your team in things? And so that might be a back part of how my brain is thinking through that award.
Very fair. Very fair. All right, let's move up the lineup a little bit with Defender of the Year nominees: Jordan Bugg of the Seattle Reign, Tara McKeown, Washington Spirit, Avery Patterson, Houston Dash, Izzy Rodriguez, Kansas City Current, and Kayla Sharples, Kansas City Current. I appreciate the tilt towards center backs in this. I think that's really interesting, because we're very much in the age of the roaming fullback. But 3 of these 5 picks are center backs. Who are you leaning toward, Meg? It's this one
tough.
Gets a little bit spicier.
I think it's really this one is really hard. I think I might be leaning Izzy Rodriguez. I think it's really tough to pick between the 2 KC options, again, because when you think about the defense, it has operated as such a unit this year, right? And so to pick one or the other, and again, this is where I'm like, don't let the quarterfinals influence you too much, right? Because Kayla Sharples was really had that moment, right, and got redemption for it. But still, I think there is that part of it. But I also think that there's a case for every single player in this. I think Avery Patterson, I put her on my short list, but she's probably more in that 4 or 5 spot for me right at the moment. Tara McKeown, she has been so important for the Washington Spirit. Jordan Bugg has obviously had an incredible season in Seattle. But for me, it's got to be one of the 2 KC players, just considering that defensive effort. How about you, Tamerra?
Yeah. There's also another interesting thing happening in this group where you have teammates. And
it's like with the Oscars or the Emmys, really, like when you've got multiple cast members from the same show splitting the vote, right?
100%.
It's really tough.
Yeah. And I mean, in the case of Izzy and Kayla, when Kayla Sharples is playing as that left center back role, she's right next to Izzy Rodriguez a lot of the time. That partnership, very much whole is greater than the sum of its parts, FC. And the quarterfinal, I'm not bringing this into my decision making, but I'm just saying the quarterfinal match was the first time I've watched a Kansas City Current from this season live. And I remember saying in our full-time group chat, this is an experience watching them move as a unit. And defense really, I think, requires a really sophisticated sort of eye in terms of assessing the brilliance of it and the efficiency of it. And I gained a lot from just watching them in person, because you see the movement that the cameras are not catching when the ball's on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
You see
I love it when you can actually see what's happening from a full.
The conversations they have when something doesn't go right. All to say, it makes it hard to almost split, how yes, you can look at especially a player like Izzy Rodriguez because she does get forward. She is, delivering crosses into the box, getting involved in the attack as well. But for me, I'm leaning Kayla Sharples. And this is sort of another factor that we can consider for debate. The inverse of what I was just saying about AKB is one of the things that has impressed me most about Kayla Sharples is how much she has improved since joining the Kansas City Current. Like, I've literally
100%.
pitched this story before because it needs to be studied, which in journalistic terms is like, I need to write about this and talk to people who can tell me the answers because I need them. She at Bay FC was solid, but when she came to the Kansas City Current, she unlocked a new level of her game that I will be very surprised if we don't see her name on U.S. Women's National Team camp call-ups. Emma Hayes was even asked about her during the last camp why she was on the list, and she's right there. But I think the degree to which she's improved shows how high her ceiling is. I think she has been, again, similar to Lorena, a player that when they're on the field, you just worry less about being overtaken. I think she's had easily the best season of her career. And she's getting the edge for me, I think, for that reason. All right, we're half-ish way there. Moving up the field to midfield. Kenza Dali, San Diego Wave, a name that we have discussed a few times in this context on this show. Dabinia of Kansas City Current. Teammate Claire Hutton on the Kansas City Current. Manaka Matsukubo, North Carolina. And Olivia Moultrie, Portland Thorns. Now, this one, in terms of quarterfinal bias, we're going to have to check it like right there, yep. I think, because...
Yeah.
But honestly, even before that, obviously we're talking about Olivia Moultrie here. Even before that, I want to say, Meg, maybe the last 6-7 games, Olivia Moultrie has also just entered another gear on top of already having a really solid season with the Portland Thorns. I feel like we should start with her because she, to me, like relatively, is the spicier kind of nominee. But maybe I'm alone.
You think Olivia Moultrie is the spicier kind of nominee? In what way?
I think she had sort of a quieter start to the season. And maybe it's because the Thorns were very much figuring themselves out.
That's fair.
They had a lot of season-ending injuries. I think that there was some midfield rotation where, yes, Moultrie was central to that with Sam Coffey, but it was either Moultrie, Coffey, and Jessie Fleming, or Hina Sugita when she was still with the Thorns. And I just felt that it took her a little while, and this is not even a knock on her, but for me, it took a while before I started going into Portland Thorns games being like, okay, how well this team does is going to depend pretty heavily on how much control Olivia Moultrie has over this midfield. Personally, that started to change maybe a third of the way into the season, and then toward the end, she became a focal point for me. I know that's only one factor for the value in MVP, but I think there's something to be said about sort of the ascent or not of an individual in the course of their team. And for me, when I look at this list, she's the one who sort of went the most like this toward the end of the season.
I mean, I do think Moultrie is my pick, which is interesting. I think here we've got another potential split of votes with Dabinia and Claire Hutton, right? And both of them have contributed in their own. I mean, this is kind of like almost old school North Carolina Courage when they were playing that sword format. Like every midfielder was important for that setup, and Dabinia was a massive part of that setup. But for me, Manaka was more of a forward when she really started popping off too. That's right? So like for me, I'm like, and on the flip side, you have Kenza Dali, who started so strong, and then San Diego, like kind of that reverse form of the Moultrie. And so for Moultrie, I think Sam Coffey could have also easily been in this list again, right? I was a little surprised when I didn't see her name because she was the 5th on my list instead of Kenza. So for me, right at the moment, it is Moultrie because generally, yes, I do think that there is, like the start of the NWSL season, I think is kind of rough for everyone, minus, I guess, Kansas City. But to see her come in and like be one of the most important players for that team, it makes it a pretty easy pick on my side.
I think I'm a little undecided. I need to sit with this one a little bit more. To me, this is the trickiest set of the bunch, I think. They're all such different players. They all relative to the rest of their teams, they play different roles. I think about how solid and reliable Claire Hutton has been defensively.
And still how young she is.
Yeah. I was looking up some stats, and she is, I believe, leading the Kansas City Current in tackles won this season at like 49, which is crazy. I think the next player after that is Lola Bonta with 40, who also could have gotten a shout, I think, this season. There was a lot of like really impressive midfield performance, I think, league-wide, and in very different ways. Kenza Dali, she's someone that I was really big on also at the beginning of the season. And honestly, again, it's sort of like an individual performance versus impacts that you're making on the team, because I think that she individually has been more consistent than the San Diego Wave as a team. But what does that mean in terms of midfielder of the year? How heavily do we weigh value in these non-MVP awards? I think it obviously has to be up there, but to me still feels a little bit different than MVP. I'm very movable object on this. I need a minute. I feel like I could make a compelling case for myself for any of these 5. And I don't usually say that. I could even make compelling cases, like I said, for people who are not on the list.
You could make a compelling case for Marta, again, right? Like, I guess technically she's listed as a forward, but with how deep she's been playing.
And that's also another question, because that came up with Manaka as well. Like, with players who can play sort of these fluid roles, where do you sort of make the call about which category they're nominated for, and how do you assess, like, if Manaka has been more threatening and more valuable to the North Carolina Courage as a forward, but she's a midfield of the year nominee, like, how does that sort of shake out? Yeah. That's a tricky one, but yes, we can always make a case for Marta for sure. So I am officially undecided on this one. I'm going to take my time with it and see how I feel. It could matter. It could come down to like the time of day that I need to do the vote. I'm not going to lie. All right. The youngins. Rookie of the year, Meg. Maddie Darlene, Seattle Reign, Lily Reel, Gotham FC, and Riley Tiernan of Angel City FC.
Yeah, I mean, after all that early season hype for Riley Tiernan, I think it's actually coming down to Lily Reel for me, right? I mean, just truly talk about becoming so important to your team so quickly. And I also think it is interesting that Sarah Szupansky did not make the short list, right? Like, Gotham, I think, had a couple real contenders for Rookie of the Year. But we can only vote for one, and for me, it's Lily Reel.
Yeah, when I saw the short list, I was sort of curious and perplexed by the fact that there were only 3 nominees.
Yeah, that's I don't know why they do that. Everything else is 5, but for rookies, it's 3.
Shortchanging the kids. I don't really get it. I will say I also found it intriguing that on the long list that we were able to see, this Rookie of the Year list did not only include players who came straight from the NCAA. It was also players who were new to the NWSL, which I thought was very interesting. I also think it's interesting that none of those players ended up actually making this list, because we that's another thing that we've debated in the past about awards, and it makes me still kind of wonder if that needs to just be a separate award. But same, Lily Reel. And honestly, even when Riley Tiernan was going on a tear, it was still Lily for me. Maybe I have a defensive bias, but she is one of those rookies who, and I don't think this is the case for either Maddie Darlene or Riley Tiernan, as impressive as their seasons have been, but there's a certain maturity, some part of me has been here before, energy that Lily Reel brings to a game that justifies her starting in a quarterfinal match with Gotham, as did Sarah Szupansky. I think credit to Gotham for the way that they recruited these rookies. But she is so solid, has a left foot that is just immaculate. The way that she whips in crosses is like artful to me. She gets involved in the attack. She's strong. She's solid with defense. I have to remind myself, although she probably would not like this, that one of her first touches as a professional was unfortunately an own goal, and you would never know based on the way that she plays now, based on the way that she quickly bounced back. She's been getting senior U.S. Women's National Team looks, also very deserved. Obviously, that's not factoring into my decision, but I bring it up to just sort of illustrate the impacts that she's had so soon. And I think Gotham's back line has benefited greatly from her being back there. She's super reliable, which is what you want in a defender, and she's getting the award for me too. Maddie Darlene, though, sneaker. And it's interesting because I wonder if you could almost say that in the first half of the season, it was very much like Riley Tiernan hours, but in a more low-key way in the second half of the season, for me, Maddie Darlene, that's when she really started making a case for herself. She's so exciting to watch too.
Yeah. I mean, and again, all three of these players have been important for their teams, but Lily Real, to me, is part of it too, is she's the only one moving on out of this group. But let's get into Coach of the Year, because this, to me, is going to be one of the most interesting ones in terms of how people approach this, because it's obviously Vlatko Andonovski, Kansas City first-place team, Adrian Gonzalez, Washington second-place team, and then Bev Yanez, Louisville. First time making the playoffs, seventh place. And so what do you value? Do you value a historic regular season where you have coached the best team in NWSL history, Shield winning, just every record shattered, best defensive team, or, no offense to Adrian here, do you value breaking a 4-year curse of a 9th place finish and getting Racing Louisville into the playoffs and clearly being such an emotional linchpin for that team? Tamerra, how are you going?
Oh, man. I wish that Vlatko and Bev did not have the seasons that they had in the same year. That's what I wish. Like, there's not even going to be enough characters for me to write that in my ballot, and I wouldn't, and waste a vote. But that's how I
need to have an emotional write-in with my ballot.
This one is tough. And again, recency bias. I'm literally recording this still in Kansas City. I'm leaning Vlatko.
Wow. Okay. I'm leaning Bev.
Really?
Yep. I think Vlatko had a lot more pieces to do. And, like, this is the thing, right? Like, strength of roster, everything. You know, I think the job that Bev Yanez has done in Racing Louisville, for me, and I think maybe there is an emotional piece for this vote, but I really think that she has that club in general has so desperately needed someone with, like, real meaningful leadership and that former player voice and, like, every single piece of what she's brought to that club. And so for me, it's Bev Yanez.
That's real. I mean, I think there's almost no wrong answer between the three of them. But
yeah, I don't think there is, right? Like, these are the correct.
They've each accomplished something, exceptional, both in relation to their own individual careers and for the club. And I think for Vlatko, for me, I go back to what I was saying about Kayla Sharples, which I could also honestly say about Temwa Chawinga. I think there's something that happens when players get to the Kansas City Current that just changes them. And we may never know all the details of what that is because we're not with the team day in and day out. But even to an extent, Michelle Cooper, I mean, she was with the Current before Vlatko came, but the elevation of certain players, and I have to mention Temwa in this because from last season to this season, I think there are certain elements of her game that have become even more refined. And it takes such special care and consideration to know how to do that with a player that is already, like, cruising at the top of the league in terms of individual players. And that's where I'm giving a lot of my credit to Vlatko and, of course, his entire coaching staff, which I think is represented by the individuals who get nominated. But again, like I said, I'm literally still in Kansas City. I was there, like, walking on the ground that was soaking up the tears of the players, you know, after the quarterfinal game. So maybe I'm a little bit influenced by that.
All right. Let's we still have some time to think on it. Let's talk about best 11s, and let's do these super quick because, first of all, these are kind of the silliest thing I think to vote on because the voting, I don't even know how they tally this. It's got to be so chaotic.
Yeah.
Like
the positions,
Anyway, Tamerra, who's your goalkeeper?
Lorena.
Who are your defenders?
Lily Reel, Kayla Sharp-Rolls, Tara McKeown, and Avery Patterson.
All right, and then because this
The midfield
it's so
forward
dumb. Just you get 6
laundry
total players
spin.
between midfielders and forwards. I generally also like the thing about best 11s is I throw an actual meaningful tactical setup out the window because it doesn't matter. Tamerra,
Exactly.
go. 6 players.
Rose Lavelle, Kenza Dali, Dabinia, Temo Shuinga, Manaka Matsukubo, and Gift Monday.
Love it. All right, for me, for goalkeeper, I always just copy it, Claudia Dickey. My defenders, I've got Sharp-Rolls, Rodriguez, Bug, and McKeown. For my front 6, and this is where I'm going to allow myself a truly silly vote, Shuinga, Esther, Manaka, Moultrie, Hutton, and I'm going to do it, Marta.
I love it. Marta needs to be part of any conversation that is a superlative.
Is this like justice for Ballon d'Or? Maybe, who knows? Just going to throw that out there.
We love justice around here. All right. Lots to debate. Some alignments and some differences, which makes for a balanced conversation. And I think, honestly, this is helping me because I also have not voted yet, and it's helping me process.
Exactly.
All right, quick break, and we are going to get out of here pretty soon. Okay, Meg, everything's been moving so quickly, but before we get out of here, we have to acknowledge our NWSL Playoff bingo cards. I barely even had a chance to promote my.
You didn't even post yours.
I didn't even realize that I won until Theo mentioned it. But yay me, yay everyone who picked my card. Winning
I know.
Team,
I'm just
let's go.
When we were assigning, we had the option of picking a card, and I was like, no, it can just be random.
Yeah.
And then I screwed myself. So.
I mean, I was of the same belief. Honestly, what I am most impressed by, and shout out to Tara on Blue Sky for actually following along, making the X's, posting the cards. We appreciate you. Thank you and to everyone else who followed along, but maybe didn't post. But honestly, what impressed me was how quickly the card filled up.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think speaks to the chaos of those quarterfinals.
I think we're getting better at predicting what is about to happen. And
yeah.
But I will say, just the joy I think everyone felt with the Marta Gets Mad square, which was one of mine that I added, and I was like, the TM is very important, first of all.
Very. Because we ended up debating, is she TM mad yet, or is she just mad?
Exactly, we have to judge it, right? But the fact that we got it on ref cam too, I think was just truly a beautiful bonus for all of us and for our meme folders.
100%. Yeah, you also had a late ad that we're going to have to save for the next one about AKB roaming with the ball that I thought was just fantastic. But yeah, I'm already looking forward to creating our next bingo card. We are getting better. And maybe the next challenge is a full blackout, because we almost could have that now, if not for, I think, the Sam Meza big tackle. Unfortunately,
to be fair, I thought she had a couple.
She did. Early in that game, huh?
Yeah, I think it counts.
That's true.
I was prepared to cross it off of mine. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, when we discussed, you're right, we did kind of conclude that counted as a big tackle. It didn't even have a TM yet, but knowing her one day, we probably will be putting trademarks around her tackles because she's just got it like that. All right, semifinals next, Meg. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah,
we already talked about the crazy
I had Casey winning it all. And so it is interesting because now, does Gotham ride that not underdog energy back to the final, right? Do we get a 2023 replay, or is it Orlando kind of reasserting themselves and proving that they know how to play without Banda, and maybe, Marta... Again, you put Marta in the game like this, right? And I think I will admit, I forgot just the level that she hits when given the chance to win something. And then on the flip side, you've got Portland, right? Who maybe, I think, we were talking last week about have they been underrated a little bit?
Yeah. And
Washington Spirit, who potentially are going to be even further depleted by injuries, but maybe get Trinity Rodman back. And I think from now, the the attempt at predicting anything feels like a fool's errand, I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'm thinking too about the benefits, and our colleague Melanie and Z-Day wrote a great piece about this that published over the weekend about the benefits of playing at home and how Portland, who definitely benefited, as they always do, from being at Providence Park against the Wave, are now going to someone else's house that is pretty rowdy, I've heard. And how that's going to affect them. Obviously the travel, but maybe not as much because they have the whole week to make their way over there. But I'm thinking about that as a factor.
Are you still going to back the Spirit all the way? You had Spirit going in these quarterfinals.
Yeah. So the biggest, like the broad question for me is, who do I think had the strongest performance in the quarterfinals to kind of inform how I'm going to approach these semis? I do think that out of the 8 teams that played in the quarterfinals, Seattle they probably challenged Orlando the least. I think I believe that. And so I'm kind of taking that into consideration with Orlando. They are going to benefit from playing at home again, which is great for them. I think Gotham showed probably the most what they're actually capable of in this postseason. I mean it don't get much better than...
The question for me about Gotham, though, is you have that high of walking into CPKC Stadium, beating a team you've never beaten, the number one seed on their own home turf. Like, can you maintain that rather than having this kind of huge letdown of adrenaline and then going in and facing the most recent champions in their own house? So that, for me, is a big question about Gotham. And to be fair, they proved everyone wrong last weekend. So there is this chance of it's not going to be a problem. But
yeah, and everyone has the muscle memory. Everyone's recently-ish won a championship at this point. So in terms of experience, I think going back to the Thorns, Sam Coffey's leadership was an MVP in itself, I think, in that San Diego game. And she has been consistent with that all season. So that's not something I expect to sort of falter at the semifinals. I agree. Again, I need more time to think about it. We'll
have to do it before. I do want to shout out Theo, who's in our little host WhatsApp group live, going, Gotham printed shirts for beating KC in the quarterfinal. A huge red flag in his book.
I mean, I was wondering, like, did you guys have this template made already?
They must have. I mean, let's real quick before we get out of here. I do want to shout out Orlando Pride. I think had the best post quarterfinal victory post in that little chat GPT knock on Seattle. But it is really interesting now of like watching the teams like from a club level figure out how to like really twist the knife in, because Gotham was another team where, you know, Casey had this whole news themed newspaper and everything about it, and Gotham was ready to flip that on its head. Is it worth a t-shirt? I don't know.
Yeah, and like we can talk about the design and stuff and the contrast, that light blue against the white shirt, like on top of everything else that I had thoughts about. And it's like, it's still kind of teal. Like, I don't know. I know that they share like that general shade of blue. But I am here for the effort. I will say that, you know, we are very pro, like more shade, more trash talk, more healthy bullying, in this league. So anything that sort of like adds kindle to that fire, I'm here for. But yeah,
you that chat GPT, you gotta back it up. If you're gonna print a t-shirt, you better win.
Right. You don't just want people wearing those for a day. That's bad for the environment. All right. We need time to keep processing some of these awards, as demonstrated by our conversation. A lot of incredible performances from individual players and teams, of course, this season. Lots to think about. And of course, as always, we want to hear from you how you might be voting, which hopefully you do. So make sure that you slide into our DMs at TA Fulltime on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure that you email us, fulltime@theathletic.com, and make sure that you're signed up for our free newsletter, by the way. We want to hear your thoughts, as always. And there's a lot to debate, I think, with these awards. Lots of philosophical sort of like paths to go down, and we want to know how you're doing it. So follow us, stay in touch, watch the show on YouTube. It's nice to just look up and see a face every once in a while, I think, especially for my fellow remote workers out there. But in case you didn't know, The Athletic has partnered with Yahoo Sports to deliver the very best coverage of women's sports at the Women's Sports Hub that you can check out at sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. We always put that link in the show notes.
I have been Meg Linehan. You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. And yeah, it's going to be a wild time waiting to do this all over again next weekend. Fortunately, just 2 games. Like, physically, I think we can both handle 2 games, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the drop off from 4 to 2 is where things start to, I mean, obviously, like, the stakes of each game are more concentrated, but there's more time to, like, do a grocery run, stretch your legs, check on your strong friend, etc. when you only have 2 big games to worry about. I am Tamerra Griffin, and I am going to be, like, pocketing ginger shots probably from now until the championship. So if you see me with, like, weirdly shaped pockets in San Jose, don't say I didn't warn you, because the weather's changing. The immune system is taking a bit of a beating with all the travel. I'm still here, still happy to be here, still happy to be covering this game. But it's time to start really taking care of myself, which I do on Instagram and Blue Sky. Thank you, as always, for listening. This show is not possible without podcast producer Theo Lloyd Hughes. Thank you for the fact checks today, Theo, as Meg and I carry ourselves across the finish line of this episode. Our video producer, Leah Griffin, and our executive producer, Emily Olson. We appreciate each and every one of you. Stay hydrated, and we'll see you around the semifinals.